I've been a pretty big advocate of what I call the Great Migration. And I was recently having a bit of a debate, discussion, etc. with Warren Mosler online. Warren, for those of you who are not familiar, is the originator of modern money theory. I've made some videos about it in the past. I'm a fairly big Warren Mosler fan. There's probably a lot of people who watch this channel who are not fans of what they would call MMT or modern money theory. Mostly, I would say those people misunderstand modern money theory. But that being said, what I think one has to give a lot of credit to Warren for is that he has been pretty accurate in a bunch of his predictions. So for example, when they started to raise interest rates and inflation was coming down, a lot of people were saying, hey, we're going to go into some sort of a recession. Warren said, absolutely not, and explained that essentially what was happening was the increased interest rates were going to mean that because the government debt to GDP was so high, you were going to actually have excess interest spending, which was going to stimulate the economy, which was going to counterbalance and create demand. And so actually the economy would be strong and unemployment would remain low. And so I didn't see really any of the kind of famous economist investor people making that call. Warren did. Warren was right. Those people were wrong. And so, there's a lot to be said for that. This being said, he was making some comments recently about the subject of immigration, some comments particularly towards why people choose to go to one place or another, and he and I had some offline discussion about it. And so I figured I would discuss it a little bit because I think it brings up some important points around this concept of the Great Migration and what is likely to come over the next few decades, in my opinion. So let's dive in and talk about it. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Welcome, I'm Michael from Offshore Citizen. We specialize in international corporate structuring, so doing very detailed international tax planning to help you pay the lowest legal amount of tax possible, either through your business or personally, as well as relocating to other countries, doing international banking, things like this. And so if you're interested in not going for the things that are improper and overly simplistic and going to get you in trouble, but actually do things that are compliant and yet optimize in a way that you can't get just in your local country, please reach out to us. You can book a call with me at calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below, or send a message through offshorecitizen.net. Okay, so what was Warren's position? Warren's position was essentially that there are certain types of actions that are being taken right now in the US that were sort of authoritarian type actions that are the types of things that cause Syrian refugees not to choose to go to Russia or China. And my initial point was, well, actually, Syrian refugees choose not to go to Russia or China because Russia or China aren't open to them. And anyway, I kind of listed a bunch of things about why people would choose to leave the US or not choose to go to the US, etc. And what we eventually kind of got into this discussion about privately was, I was kind of mentioning, well, let's kind of go and take a look at the UNHCR data, which kind of explains where people are going. You will see that 3 of the top 5 countries that refugees have gone to are Uganda, Colombia, and Turkey. And that a lot of this has to do with proximity, right? The reality for people is they tend to go, by and large, what is proximate, and there's a variety of reasons for that, right? But then if you step back from there and you start to look at it, then what you'll realize is that you'll realize there are a few other things that are really the main drivers of where people go. And so his position kind of was that, hey, listen, I believe people choose to avoid authoritarian regimes. And my argument was essentially this. I said, look, if that were true, that people were trying to avoid authoritarian regimes, then you would not see places in the Middle East being highly popular for immigration, which they happen to be, as well as places like Singapore. And you can, pretend, okay, Singapore is a democracy, etc. Singapore is a pretty authoritarian country. Let's just really be honest about it. And at the same time, you would expect to see countries that are, I guess you would say, poor democracies being favored over some of these other countries, and that's just simply not true. So if you kind of take a look, how many people are moving to South Africa, right? This is supposedly non-authoritarian, democratic, etc. country. They're not going there, right? And so I think what you observe when you pay attention to why people go where they go, it is principally 2 main things initially. The one is economics. People go where there's financial opportunity. It's probably the biggest reason for a lot of people to relocate. And the second is safety, okay? So these 2 things are like major drivers of where you're gonna go. Obviously, you can see in someplace like Europe, right? You have all sorts of Ukrainians. Like, why did they leave Ukraine? Well, it was not safe, right? It's a pretty good reason to leave your country. And why do people choose to leave places like certain parts of Eastern Europe and go to some place like Germany? They go from Serbia to Germany. It's not so much because of the authoritarianism or not, it's mostly because of the economic opportunities. That tends to be kind of this driver. And so the thesis behind the Great Migration, this concept that I talk about, is essentially that historically economic opportunities have been tightly coupled to where it is that you're located. In other words, why do you live where you live? You probably are there for one of three reasons. You were born there, you moved there for work, you moved there for school. That's like the main three reasons people would live where they would live historically. And now you're in a situation where you go to school actually can be done remotely online, and where you work can be done remotely online. And in that environment, where people will choose to be, yes, there will be a bunch who will choose to be where they were born, but people will tend to go where they have a lower cost of living, okay? And cost of living includes taxes, so we have to kind of factor in the total picture, as well as where the quality of life is higher. And so this tends to favor warm weather, not necessarily. I know some very wealthy people, clients of mine, et cetera, who choose to go to countries that are more milder climates. Obviously Switzerland is popular, Ireland can be popular for some people, New Zealand can be popular for some people, but that would just generally be the bias, right? So away from extreme weather places and towards more temperate, leaning towards warm places. That's the general migration pattern. And similarly, you've got, you're going to move to places that are safe, the quality of life is good, this means you have conveniences, et cetera, and that your costs are lower. This is just like the general trend that you will see. And this will not happen all at once. It's not, a massive, massive flood, but it's a gradual and increasing move. What you'll notice is that people, tend to have inertia. They tend not to change their pattern of behavior, right? So in other words, the default is to stay where you are. And even people who are unable to, even people who might like it, et cetera, getting them to move is it's kind of uncomfortable. And so that's fair. That is the way that people are. But as we increasingly open up this possibility, you're going to see more and more of it. And I think especially as people can work remotely and travel, then travel kind of inevitably starts to lead to, oh, well, you know what? It's not so bad to stay here. Oh, I meet some other digital nomad people who, wow, they're living in Bali. Maybe I should live in Bali. Maybe I should live in Thailand. Maybe I should live in Philippines, this sort of thing. And that trend really is very hard to underappreciate in how the world is going to shift over the next, again, what is that? Probably 20 to 50 years, maybe 20 to 100 years. It's a pretty long-term trend, right? But what does it do? It radically changes the concept of who belongs somewhere and your relationship to the place that you exist. There's something really interesting. I was having a conversation with a friend today. We were talking a bit about Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, and him discussing how historically there was a period of time where there were churches that were basically told that they were responsible for the people in the area because they were on the ground providing for them, etc. And because of the fact that these churches didn't want to provide for a bunch of people, you would have them shipping people off to other parishes where they would be taken care of. And essentially it started to become this thing where you couldn't move to areas without the permission of the local priest and things like this. It was kind of this messed up situation, this skewed set of incentives that a lot of people are just not kind of familiar with, right? So there's a similar sort of dynamic coming in here. I talk sometimes about how this is quite similar, in my view, to the discovery of North America and kind of the mass migration that took place from Europe to North America. You kind of have the people who are moving from the traditional brick and mortar world to the world of the internet. The new American dream is the internet dream. That's kind of a Balaji comment. I credit him. And so as that happens, what naturally takes place? Well, first of all, you see that the way in which taxes work change, the way in which visas work change, the way in which you organize structures around countries, etc., change. The relationships between people and countries change. For example, I was just talking to somebody at dinner today, and we were discussing a little bit about some of the rules around if you have a UA residence permit, how that allows you to go visa-free to some places. This is not normal. If you think kind of historically, you would have a passport, right? But you have a residence permit, and that residence permit gives you travel privileges. This is just sort of going to expand. You can see, although they have been kind of shutting down a lot of what we might call economic migration, right? You've been decreasing a lot of golden visa programs, etc. In spite of that, you're in a situation where there's been this massive proliferation of digital nomad visas. There's literally dozens and dozens of visas that have been created since COVID, so in a very short period of time. I've done some videos talking about a bunch of those. So I think it's really pertinent to consider where is it that you want to be, that's probably a good thing, but also where are the places that are going to be beneficiaries of this sort of system, and where are the ones that are going to do poorly in this system. And again, I've done some videos talking about sort of the natural causation as the tax base of certain places gets eroded and what they do as the next steps. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. Put it in the comments below. If you have any questions that you'd like answered, if you'd like help with, again, relocating to other countries, if you want to get residency in UAE or residency in some other country, if you want to optimize your global tax, please reach out to us, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.